Okay, we're back for 7.2. Again, this is the same note sheet we were working on last time. We're just going to finish off the rest of it. I just kind of put it all on one sheet. And today we're going to look at writing the equation of the line. So up at the top, sorry about that. Up at the top, I wrote the formulas, rise over run, slope intercept, and point slope. But remember, you've got this sheet of formulas as your notes, which are, in my opinion, easier to look at because I haven't read what you plug in. So these are the formulas you want to use for these problems 1 through the rest of these problems. I don't know how many there are, but they're the same. They're the same formulas as you have up there. So now all our directions today are going to ask you to write the equation line in the form given, write the equation line in slope-intercept form, given these different things. And so what slope-intercept form looks like is this y equals mx plus b. We just want it to look like this form. And so we're going to have to use all three of these formulas depending on what they give you. So if you look at this number 1, it says write the equation line given m and b. So we look over here. Maybe I can get these both on the same screen. Which one of these formulas has m and b? This one right here. Should have written this a little bit smaller so I can get it all on one page. Well, let's try to get it right here. Okay, so we're going to use this slope-intercept form where m is 2 and b is 12. So we're just using that formula, y equals mx plus b. And we're going to plug in a 2 for m and a 12 for b. So my answer is just y equals 2x plus 12. And that's your equation of the line. Because you could graph that if you needed to. This isn't making you graph it. But that's the equation of a line that you need to graph it. Okay, let's look at number 2. Slope is -1 and y-intercept 0, -3. This one has a point, and so you could use this formula. You definitely could. But do you see this one says when the y-intercept is 0 with some number, then you can still use this easier formula. So we're going to use the y equals mx plus b again for this one. But you see from our formula, if the first number of the point 0, then this is your b. Because remember, it's where it crosses the y axis, which would mean the x would be 0. So we can just plug this in and say y equals m is -1, x, and then b is -3. And so there's our equation of the line. Now you can only do that when this is a 0. If you look down at this one, it has a point, but it's a 12 there, so you can't use the shortcut. This one has a -1 there. You can't use the shortcut. It only works when that first number is 0. That's the biggest mistake people make on these, is wanting to always use that formula. You can only use it if it gives you a y-intercept, or if it gives you b, or if it tells you it's a y-intercept and has the point 0, -3. Okay, let's look at these next two. These are the ones I always tell my students to put a star by them because these are ones you need to memorize. So let's put a star by 3 and 4 because the only way to do them is really by memory. So do you notice this one says slope 0 and this one says slope undefined. So slope 0 and slope undefined are these two special cases up here. So let's talk about slope. Slope is rise over run. Do you see when you look at this line, you're not rising at all. You rise 0 and you run however many, run infinity. But this one has a slope of 0 because slope is what angle something is at, and flat ground is always 0. Where this one is like the side of a wall. Do you see here you rise as many as you want, but you run 0. So you would be dividing by 0, which means that this slope is undefined. It's kind of like the side of a wall. And so if we go back and look at the ones we did last time, these lines, these are normal lines. This is a negative slope because it goes downhill. And you see in our problem, well, let's look up here, the slope was negative. So if you're walking along, downhill is negative slope. Let's look here at the bottom. Uphill is positive slope. See, this one had a positive slope. Back in high school, they used to think about skiing. Skiing uphill is really, really hard. It takes positive energy. Downhill, very, very easy. It takes negative energy. Flat ground is 0. Actually, walking is probably better because skiing on flat ground is hard, but walking on flat ground takes 0 effort. Walking down the side of the building is impossible. You'd be dead on the ground. Here's your little body if you tried to walk down the side of the building. So a vertical line is no solution. So horizontal is 0 slope. Vertical is undefined slope. So when you get to these, what I want you to memorize is that slope 0, let's put it up here, is always y equals, and undefined is always x equals. And if you can't remember which one's which, you would have just graphed them on the test, and you see that 0 is y equals and undefined is x equals. And so they're never going to have like an x, y, and all that. They're just going to have a single letter. So as soon as I see slope 0, I know my answer is y equals. And then I look up here, what's my y value? -3. And that's your answer there. As soon as I see undefined, it's x equals. And what's my x value? 5. So that's your answer. Now these, you could plug this one into the slope-intercept formula. What did I do with my formulas? Which we'll use here in a minute, and I'll show you how that'll work here in a minute. So you do have a point and a slope, so you could plug it in here. But this one, you can't plug in anything because undefined, you can't plug that in a formula. So that's why I like you to put star by these, and just remember that star means memorize. Slope 0 is y equals, undefined is x. And if you can't remember which one, I just remember I had to think about this a long time ago, make myself a way to remember. I just think of undefined as thinking of xing it out. So undefined is x and 0 is y. I don't know, think of yo or something, but undefined is x equals, 0 is y. So try to memorize those. I'm going to put on here, memorize. 0 is y, undefined is x. Okay, those 4, quick and easy. You're just plugging them in. Let's look at this next one. So this one wants you to write the equation of the line given this graph. Okay, well, how am I supposed to do that? Well, here's our formula. Let me move it over here. Y equals mx plus b. So remember, this is my y-intercept, and I can get that by looking at the graph. Where does this cross the y-axis? At 3. So my y-intercept is 3. Well, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep on the... So here's my formula, y equals mx plus b. My y-intercept is a +3 because that's where it crosses there. And now I need my slope, but remember, slope is rise over run. And so you can get your slope from just counting. So you want to count, how far does it take for me to get from this point to this point? Like you're driving down these streets and you can't cut through people's yards. Do you see I would need to go down 3 and then to the right 2? So it's rise over run. So my slope is down 3. So that's a -3, and to the right 2. My x comes down, my y and my equals comes down. And that's the equation of the line. So you just look at the graph for your y-intercept, and then you count the slope for your, you count down for your slope. Okay, this next one, now we're given a point and a slope. You see through the point 12, 10, and slope 1. So we look at our formulas. We don't want to use slope-intercept form because we don't have an intercept. What we have is a point and a slope. I've had students before ask me, well, how do I know when to use which one? Well, when it gives you a point and a slope, you use point, slope. Okay, so this formula is this, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep everything on the camera and it's just not easy. Let's get this over. So we're going to be using this y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So the formula is y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. And we're going to plug in where it's red here. So my point, you see it says right here, your point is x1, y1. I should have a 1 on there. x1, y1. And my slope is m. So my slope here's 1. So I'm going to plug in here, here, and here. So I'm going to say y minus y sub 1 is 10 equals m is 1. Parentheses, x minus x sub 1 is 12. So you plug in those 3 places, and then you want it to look like this one up here. So we're just going to go through and solve. So we're going to distribute our 1. So y minus 10 equals 1x minus 12. And then to get y by itself, you see I just need to move the 10 over. So y equals 1x minus 2. And there's my equation of the line. So you just plug it in and solve until you get it in y equals mx plus b form. Okay, let's look at number 7. So same thing, just this time our slope's a fraction. So this is my m, this is my x1, y1. Got it up there. And so I'm going to plug it in, y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So y minus x sub 1 is 6 equals, now our m is negative. And so if you just throw the negative out front, it gets lost kind of in the equals. So if you don't want to lose your negative, I always write it right next to my top number, just because your eye sees it better than if it's thrown out here by this line, it gets it all lost. So put the negative up beside it, and then parentheses x, but be careful right here, it's minus a negative, which makes that a positive 1. So I always tell people to stop here and check. Do you see your positive 6 becomes a negative in the formula and comes over here, and your negative 1 comes over to the other direction and becomes a positive. So it's kind of like they switch sides and signs. This one comes over here and this one comes over there, and they both change signs. So I always say check that first before you move on, just because you don't want to go through all the rest of the work if you've got your signs wrong. Okay, now we've got to solve this. Now you can distribute this fraction, but I promise you, anybody that tries to distribute the fraction always misses it, because you got to find a common denominator and go through all this stuff. So if you had me for 0300, I always talk about the 6 steps for solving equations. And anytime you have an equation, get rid of that fraction in the first step. Because this has a denominator of 6, I can get rid of the fraction by multiplying everything by 6 except parentheses. You don't do the parentheses, it's kind of like they're protected there. So I get a 6y minus 36 equals, that cancels out that 6, leaving me a negative 5 times x plus 1. So that was step 1, get rid of fractions. Step 2, get rid of parentheses. So now we're going to distribute. So my 6y minus 36 comes down, and this equals a negative 5x minus 5, because the signs are different. Now I need to get y by itself, so I need to move this 36 to the other side. So I'm going to add a 36 to both sides and get 6y equals a negative 5x plus 31, because I just did my sign rules there. And then divide everything by 6. So my final answer is y equals a negative 5/6x, and you can just leave that a fraction, 31 over 6. And so now it's in y equals mx plus b. You could graph that if you had to, and you're ready to go. Okay, just a few more. This next one's really the same thing. Just got another fraction, so let's go ahead and just work through another one. And so we're going to use that formula, y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1, where this is my x1, y1, and this is my m. So let's plug that in. So y minus a negative 2 makes that a positive 2. Remember, if it's negative there, it's positive there, equals a 1/4, parentheses, x minus 7. And this positive 7 there becomes a negative over there. Now to solve it for y, we're going to get rid of our fraction by multiplying everything by 4, because that cancels out that denominator there. So 4y plus 8 equals 1 times x minus 7. I'm going to get rid of my parentheses. So 4y plus 8 equals 1x minus 7. I need my y by itself, so I'm going to move this 8 over and get 4y equals 1x minus 15. And then divide everything by 4. Y equals 1/4 x minus 15/4. And that's your answer. Okay, the last two, let me get the formulas back in here. These last two give you 2 points, so it didn't give you a slope. Do you see, to use this one, you've got to have a point and a slope. To use this one, you have to have a slope and a y-intercept, and we really don't have any of those. We have 2 points. So we do want to use this one, but before we can use it, we have to find our slope. And how we find our slope is using this formula right up here. And so these have two steps you have to do on this one. So first you have to find the slope, and then you plug it in that y minus y sub 1, let's hold the camera, equals m times x minus x sub 1. So the slope formula is this y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. But you see how I have these both in blue or black if you ran it off? That's because those are part of the formula. So I always say when you start this, make sure you draw your two negatives before you even plug anything in. And then you plug in that y2, y1, x2, x1. The biggest mistake people make on these is signs, and they make that mistake because they don't write those negatives in there. And so now before we plug them in, this is your x1, y1, just like we've been talking about before, and this is your x2, y2. It just really means the first x and y and the second x and y. You could flip them and you'd still get the right answer. It doesn't really matter the order. You just label one of them x1, y1 and one of them x2, y2, and then you plug them in. But like I said, I want you to start with this before you plug the numbers in. And now let's start plugging them in. So y sub 2 is 14. Y sub 1, do you see, is a negative 2. If you don't already have that negative there, you might lose that because two negatives make a positive. So you've got to have both of those negatives. And so we get a, I'm going to write it down here, we get a 16 on the top. And then the bottom, x sub 2 is negative 3, and x sub 1 is 5. So there it stays negative, so the signs are alike. Add and keep the same sign. And then 16 divided by negative 8 is negative 2. So that's my m. So first you have to plug it in to find your m. And now we're going to plug that m in right there. And you can use either point, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to use x1, y1 because it's already labeled. And so I'm going to use this slope and this point and plug it in this formula. So here, I'll switch color pens so it'll be easier to see. So y minus negative 1 is negative 2. So minus a negative makes that a positive 2 equals negative 2 times x minus x sub 1 is 5. So there's no fraction. That's nice. So I just need to distribute. So y plus 2 equals a negative 2x plus 10. And then move my 2 over. Y equals negative 2x plus 8. One more, same thing. I won't show as many steps this time. So first we're going to find our m by plugging it in this formula, where this is my x1, y1, and this is my x2, y2. So it's going to be y sub 2 is 1, y sub 1 is 5, x sub 2 is negative 8, and x sub 1 is negative 2. So do you see on the top, 1 minus 5 is negative 4. And then on the bottom, two negatives make a positive, so negative 8 plus 2 is negative 4. And then go ahead and simplify this. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. Okay, and then we're going to plug it in. This y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Again, you can use either point. I'm just going to use this one because it's already labeled and say y minus y sub 1 is 5 equals m is 1, parentheses, x minus a negative 2 makes that a positive 2. Remember, stop. 5 comes over here and becomes negative, and negative 2 comes over here and becomes positive. Then we distribute. Y minus 5 equals 1x plus 2, and then move my 5 over. Y equals 1x plus 7. Whew, that was a long ways. So that's writing the equation line. So you should have already done 7.1. So here's practice problems from 7.1. So you should have already done 1 through 8. If not, get those done and send them to me. And then starting here with number 15 is the practice problems for 7.2. So work through these and send them to me for your attendance. And then I'll have the answers to these uploaded also so you can check your answers and make sure that you did them correctly. So that's 7.2.